I don't know about the God that you serve, but I'm so glad that the God that I worship is not a respecter of person. John, you might want to cut that off or we'll be singing all day. But that no matter what you're going through, God will do it again. That's some good background music. To God be the glory for the things God has done. Just turn the iPod off. Just push the stop button. And cut off. Thank you. Praise the Lord for technology. It is such a joy for us to be here to share with you all today. I thank God for my wife who has been so diligent to travel around this state with me, and now folks are getting to hear her sing, and they don't care whether I come or not. But God has truly blessed her with a gift. And I thank God for her willingness to share that. To your pastor, thank you so much for the invitation to come and to share with you all. And I bring you greetings from your conference office. Let me toss in a couple of disclaimers here as I get ready to get started. First, let's just deal with the hat. As many of you know, some of you know that I am currently undergoing cancer treatments. And thus my hair has fallen out. And so that's why I wear the hat. And I did not realize how vain I was until I lost my hair. Thus the hat. So you will see me from now until it grows back. And I thank God that they make hats in every shape, size, and color. So that's the hat. The other thing that I want to put out here, I'm African American. And I was born and raised in the black church. And in the black church, preaching is not a monologue. Come on, help me somebody. Yeah. Preaching is a dialogue. And so if you all help me, this won't take long. Let us pray. Eternal God, for every good and perfect gift, we pause now and say thank you. God, for the gift of life and health and strength and the gift of this very hour, we say thank you. And now, God, we ask that you would send your power, your presence, and breathe on these words and make them yours. Hide me behind the cross, O God, so that men might see thee. Help us, O God, to leave here just a little bit better than we were when we came, knowing that we have spent time in the presence of the divine. And we thank you now and believe that we have all that we've asked, because we have come in that name that is above every name, the name of Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. Amen. For just a few moments, if we can revisit that 41st Psalm, verses 1 through 3, for just a moment. Psalm 41, verses 1 through 3. It reads on this wise: Blessed is he who considers the poor. The Lord will deliver in the time of trouble. The Lord will preserve him and keep him alive, and he will be blessed on the earth. And you will not deliver him to the will of his enemies, for the Lord will strengthen him on his bed of illness, and he will be sustained on his sick bed. For a few moments this morning, I want to talk about good 411 for your 911. Good 411 for your 911. We live in a vast technological age, as we just experienced with our iPod, and we tend to have resources or mechanisms that are in place to handle and accommodate just about everything. Think about it. As humans, we are wise in our abilities and we are keen in our aptitude. It doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter the circumstances, we will always develop some resource, some mechanism, some type of system that's equipped to deal with it. Think about this for a moment. You can go to the hospital and they can scan your entire body in a matter of seconds. And then they can actually perform surgery on you without ever actually cutting you open. That's vast technology. 50 years ago, we never would have imagined that we could fly clear across the country and be back home before it gets dark. Our resources, our abilities are tremendous. As humans, we know we've developed a banking system and it gets more and more sophisticated every day. But now you don't even have to go to the bank. You can deposit a check right from the comfort of your own home. Incredible resources. We've got machines that spit out money. Then we have machines that suck in money and spit out coffee. So it's the internet. The internet itself has virtually put the world at our fingertips. Yes, humankind is wise in its abilities. Think back with me, if you will, let's tell our age a little bit, to several years ago. I think it was somewhere around the mid-1970s. And during this era, in our keen wisdom and intellect, we developed two distinct communication systems that literally transformed the way that we live. These two intricate and complex systems are quite sophisticated. And they were designed to provide knowledge and assistance in just a matter of a few moments. These two systems, they have saved countless lives, and they have supplied help in numerous situations. And even despite the intricate design, both systems are simple. So simple that the young and the old alike have no problem really utilizing them. How many of us can remember back when you needed some information, you could pick up your telephone and dial the numbers 411. Anybody remember that? No. Yeah, and then we have an emergency. When you have an emergency situation, you can pick up that same phone and dial the numbers 911. These two communication systems were developed and designed to help and simplify our lives. Now, if we were to give this some thought today, if we were to examine our motives and our reasoning whenever we would dial 411, that would be pretty simple. That's not doesn't take a great deal of speculation about when you should dial 411. Anytime you needed to acquire information that you didn't already have, that's when you would do that and dial 411. But now 911. Let's think on this for a moment. That's a little different. See, whenever there's an emergency, we've been taught, we even teach it to our children, to dial 911. The very word emergency, I believe, is a relative term. We've got some wiggle room here, church, because what's defined as an emergency to one person may not be an emergency to somebody else. Huh? What's a crisis to you might only be an inconvenience to me. Church, what is it that constitutes a true emergency? That might vary from person to person and from circumstance to circumstance. So before someone decides to pick up the phone and dial 911, it's important that they can adequately determine exactly what is an emergency. Friends, this initial decision making is important because whenever somebody dials 911, they're required to provide certain information. As sophisticated as our emergency system is, it still requires some information in order for it to function. And so when you call 911, the operator on the phone is going to ask you your name. They're going to ask you to verify your location. And then they will say, please state your emergency. Saints, if you're expecting to get some help for your 911 situation, then you've got to be able to identify what your emergency is. See, some folks, they might be physically ill, so they may have a medical emergency, and somebody else may have an emergency where they have been victimized, or somebody's car may have broken down, somebody's property might be in jeopardy. If you want some help, then you've got to identify what your emergency is. And beloved, we all have them. Trust me, I don't know anybody who hasn't had a 911 situation. We've all had them in some kind or another, but maybe you didn't dial 911, but it was still an emergency nonetheless. Think about it. Some of us have had some financial emergencies. Hello, somebody. We've had some relationship emergencies. And so we've had some emotional emergencies. I would contend to say that we've even had some spiritual emergencies. And to each of us, they may look different. Maybe your life wasn't on the line, but your livelihood was. And to you, that was an emergency. My Christian friends, these are all, there are 911 situations all around us. Sometimes it's really all in how you define it. Think about it. Listen, right now, this very moment, you might be sitting next to a 911 person who lives in a 911 neighborhood and is breathing 911 air. Saints, there are emergencies all around us. God knows we are living in a 911 world. Come on. I can't speak for you all, but just turn on the TV. When our government can find money for bombs but can't find money for bread, I call that an emergency. When young black men are gunned down in the streets, come on. When our playgrounds have become battlefields and our classrooms are war zones, that's an emergency. Just look around. Crime is up and church attendance is down. I call that an emergency. We're building prisons faster than we're building schools. Emergency. Daily, folks are working themselves sick, but then they can't afford the health care to get well. That's an emergency. We've got preachers spewing hate and politicians spewing hate and churches locking folks out. I don't know what you all call it, but I call that an emergency. And church, with all of this madness going on around us, with all of these 911 situations that face us day in and day out, sometimes I just want to throw up my hands and cry out like the prophet Isaiah, is there a word from the Lord? I can't speak for anybody else, but when I'm facing a 911 situation, then I need to find some good 411 information. I need some information that can handle it, that can somehow help me handle the crisis that I'm going through. Beloved, I am so glad that in the midst of an all-out emergency, I stumbled onto this word from David, found in Psalm 41. Yeah, see, friends, David, the author of this unusual psalm, I believe that David is quite qualified to address and respond to questions of crises and incidents of critical proportions. I've shared this over and over again, that David is one who perhaps more than others has had his experience with emergency situations. I encourage you sometimes when you get home to just browse through this brother's life story. And you'll see that this young man is experienced with the urgent and the extreme. But church, I'm confident that when David sat down and penned this particular psalm, a psalm that in its entirety appears to be an ongoing chronicle of calamities, I'm certain that David had no idea that someone would come up with a numeric abbreviation that signifies and represents the very urgent and the extreme that he's writing about. I am convinced that when young David sat down and included vital snippets of information in this particular hymn of distress and deliverance, y'all, I'm sure he didn't know that centuries later, man would come up with a numeric abbreviation that would come to signify and represent the location of this vital information. I don't want to lose anybody. Stay with me here. I am convinced that when this fella David sat down and penned this musical interlude, he had no conceivable idea that one day man would come along and place numerical divisions and numerical subdivisions on the very psalm that he was writing. Church, but all of that is exactly what we have done. And I want to say, it sent a chill down my spine after reading the entire 41st Psalm. One that we might say is a psalm replete with emergency situations. But there, housed in that very first verse of Psalm 41, I saw something. Come on, right there, in our numerical abbreviation. Y'all with me? There, Psalm 41, verse 1. Come on. Psalm 41, verse 1. Psalm 4, what? Thank you. I found some information for our emergency situation. David had no way of knowing, but in his own time of trouble, when he penned this psalm, he actually provided us with some good 411 for our 911. It's all very simple. Very simple. Come on, church, right quick. Let me show you what I found. First of all, right there, the first word in the first verse of this psalm is blessed. Blessed. See, because even though the psalm is full of emergency situations, the first thing that it informs us of is about being blessed. Look at it. It says, blessed are those who consider the poor. See, being poor is an emergency in and of itself. I don't have to tell you all that poverty is a desperate and a despondent place to be in. But David says we are blessed when we consider those who are poor. I think the church needs to pause here for a moment, because this is some important information. Say, please understand me today that being poor is not always about a lack of money. I need you to hear me. Poverty, by simple definition, is the lack of any necessary resource. And church, that resource is not always financial. Yes, you can have a pocket full of money, but Jesus said you can be poor in spirit. You can be sitting in Times Square, surrounded by thousands of people, but you can still be lonely. That's poverty. Some folks are emotionally poor. Others are friendship poor. Somebody's heartache has given them a poor attitude. Saints, some child right now is poverty-stricken because they lack the love and the nurturing to sustain them. The text says, blessed are those who consider the poor. So in other words, you are blessed in spite of whatever you're going through. When you're in the midst of your own 911 situation, it might do you well to stop and take some time and consider that somewhere there is someone else who is much worse off than you. Saints, that's some good 411. When you're in the midst of your emergency, why not stop and think about somebody who's wrestling with their own? As rough as some of us may have it, we need to think about just how good God really has been. The next time you call your sore bunion an emergency, I dare you to stop and consider the person who has no feet. It'll remind you that you're blessed. The next time that you yell 911 because your grandkids are getting on your nerves, why don't you pause and think about the mother whose son is on death row? You're blessed. I tell folks all the time, just as I was complaining now about my losing my hair. I've lost my hair, I lost my eyebrows, but I haven't lost my joy. I'm blessed. When you can't decide between chicken or beef or poultry or pork, just stop and think about the man whose only choice is which garbage can to rummage through. Is anybody hearing me today? The next time you want to cuss and fuss because you lost your keys, stop and consider somebody who's lost their mind, somebody who's lost their family, somebody lost their hope and lost their soul. Church, here's some 411 information. And that is that whatever your 911 situation, the Bible says to just remember that in spite of it all, you are blessed. Any blessed folks in this house? Yeah. Food and shelter and family and friends and chicken in your pot. You are blessed. You're blessed. But hold on, because there's some more good 411 for anybody experiencing a 911. See, right after David tells us that I'm blessed, he goes on to say, I like this, that the Lord will deliver me. It's in the text. Saints, in an emergency, that's some good 411. Because see, when you dial 911, you're not calling them to chit-chat. You don't dial 911 when you just want to yak and shoot the breeze. No. See, when you've got a 911 situation, you want to call someone who can take some action. You want someone who is equipped to do something about what's going on. And saints, it's just good to know that when an emergency strikes, God is a God of action. God is a God that will deliver. And says God won't just deliver, but God will deliver in the time of trouble. Come on, that's some good 411. Let me help you explain what I mean here. Anybody remember when Domino's Pizza, they used to have a slogan that said delivery in 30 minutes, hot, fresh, or it's free. Anybody old like me can remember that? Well, I don't know if cold pizza constitutes an emergency, but I'm just glad to know that my God is a deliverer. And y'all, whether it's 30 minutes or 30 years, we have to understand that whenever God delivers, it will be in time and on time. That's good 411. When you're dealing with an emergency, when we're dealing with an emergency to us, time is of the essence. We want fast and swift action. When it's our 911 situation, sometimes we will get caught up in the drama and caught up in the heat of the moment, and we want God to be like dominoes. We want our deliverance in 30 minutes or less. But how many of you know that God's time is not our time? God's thoughts are not our thoughts. God is not bound by time, space, or eternity. And just because you're tripping over your emergency, that doesn't mean that God was caught off guard. David said he'll deliver in the time of trouble. And for all of the folks who are disturbed and distressed about the things that are going on every day in this world, I want you to notice that he didn't say God will deliver us from trouble. Stay with me. No. Let's be clear. Let's be clear about what I mean by deliverance. See, I already told you that as long as you're on this side of the grass, you're going to have some 911 situations. God never promised us a trouble-free existence. So deliverance does not mean that everything will be smooth sailing. No, church. Deliverance might look like comfort in the time of sorrow. Or it might look like some unexpected resource. It might be a way of escape out of a tough spot. Deliverance means that your present situation will not overtake you. So it's not that God always delivers us from trouble. But the promise is that God will deliver us right in the midst of our trouble. I don't know, that ought to be some good 411. David says, God will. Come on, now that's present tense. That's an active voice, and it signifies deliberate and affirmative action. God will do it. Saints, this 411 is over 2,000 years old, but just like dominoes, whenever God shows up, it's guaranteed to be hot, fresh, and in time. For somebody, that's some good 411. That there's an old gospel song, Shell knows it, that says, he's an on-time God. Yes, he is. But y'all don't have to take my word for all of this. Just get the 411 from some other folk. Folks who've been caught up in some of their own 911 situations. Yeah, come on with me. Let's go to Bible country for a minute and just ask Moses if God didn't part the Red Sea on time. Ask Daniel if God didn't rock those lions to sleep on time. Why don't you ask those Hebrew boys if God didn't turn down the heat in a fiery furnace on time? You don't have to listen to me. Just get the 411 from a dead man named Lazarus. Because see, Mary and Martha thought Jesus showed up 3 days late. But I believe Lazarus will tell you God raised him right on time. Saints, regardless of your crisis, in spite of your emergency, I stopped by today with some good 411 for your bad 911. And my grandmama said that the good news is that God may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time. Listen, I'm going to let y'all alone, but before I sit down, for all the folks who are struggling, myself included, for all of the folks who are struggling right now in the very midst of a 911 emergency, let me blow your mind with one final thing from this text, and I'm going to take my seat. Remember I told you how the very first verse of this 411 song begins with the word blessed. Well, guess what? I noticed that the last verse also begins with the same word, blessed. Oh, y'all, that's some good 411, because what that says is that despite of all of the calamities that fill this biblical sandwich, in spite of all of the emergency situations that you may have to go through, just know that you're blessed going in. And when all is said and done, you're going to be blessed coming out. I don't know, that's something to be glad about. I encourage you when you get home, take some time and read this entire transcript of this 911 call. Because for every 911 that David faced, God blessed him right in this text with some 411 to help him make it through. Just listen in for a minute. Hello, this is 911. Brother David, what exactly is your emergency? Well, verse 1, he says he had some trouble. Y'all, that's the 911. But then it said God will deliver. That's the 411. Verse 2, he says he's got some enemies. That's the 911. But it says God preserves and God protects. That's the 411. In verse 3, it looks like somebody is there on a sick bed. Church, that's the 911. But it also says God sustains. Come on, that's the 411. I ain't got time to run the whole thing down for you, but you read it when you get home. But for anybody today who is facing an emergency situation, listen, if you've got some troubles, that's 911. You got some problems, 911. Death and destruction in the Middle East, racism, political corruption, all of that is 911. If you've got some more bills than you've got money, if your heart is broken and your friends are few, you've got a 911 situation. But I came all the way to Ithaca today with some 411 information. Wake up your neighbor, because this is important. You want them to know this 411 information. It is infinite in its inspiration. It's personal in its application. It's universal in its declaration. Church, I got the 411, and it is wonderful in its translation and holistic in its sanctification. Church, the good 411 for your bad 911 is that no matter what you're going through, just remember you are blessed. I know it's painful. I know the situation might be scary. It can even be stressful. But whatever you do, please remember that you're blessed going in and you'll be blessed when you come out. Church, the 411 is that God will deliver you in time and on time. The 411 is that despite your emergency, God will heal. God will sustain. God will restore. Somebody said it was cancer. That's the 911. But I know the great physician, and I know Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals. That's the 411. Somebody said, be not dismayed. Whate'er betide, God will take care of you. The word of God for the people of God.